They called him Paagal Kaddu Paddu, the man who talked to pumpkins. Every morning, villagers laughed as he painted faces on vegetables and whispered stories into their hollow skins. To them, he was the joke of the market, the man whose mind had lost its way. But what they didn't see was the tenderness in his eyes, the kind that only someone who has loved and lost could carry. Each pumpkin had a name, carefully painted on it: Ravi, Meena, Amma, Bola, all the people who once filled his world with laughter. Years ago, Paddu was a beloved village teacher, full of energy and mischief. He taught children to dream, to speak truth, and to believe that kindness could change anything. But one monsoon night, the old school's roof collapsed. His little boy, Ravi, was trapped inside, the laughter in Paddu's life silenced forever. From that day, he stopped teaching humans and started teaching pumpkins, because they never left him, never judged him, never forgot to listen. One evening, as he walked back from the market drenched in rain, children followed, mocking him, throwing pebbles, calling him Paagal. But when he reached home, he saw a small boy waiting under the banyan tree, soaked, shivering, holding a broken slate. "Uncle," the boy whispered, "can you teach me?" Paddu froze. The world stopped spinning. His eyes filled with tears as the pumpkin slipped from his hand and rolled into the mud. He knelt down, lifted the boy's face, and smiled for the first time in years. "Yes, beta, let's begin." That night, laughter returned to Paddu's hut. The pumpkins watched quietly as the candlelight danced, and after years of silence, a lost teacher began to live again. Paddu's hut slowly transformed into something magical, a school made of mud walls, candlelight, and hope. Every evening, barefoot children came running from nearby slums, carrying torn notebooks and big dreams. They sat on the floor, eyes wide, ready to learn. Paddu taught them not just alphabets and numbers, but life itself. Education, he'd say softly, isn't what fills your pocket, it's what fills your heart. He drew letters on old slates, told stories from his past, and used pumpkins as imaginary students to make the children laugh. "Kaddu ji, pay attention," he'd shout jokingly, and the kids would giggle until their bellies hurt. But beyond the laughter, Paddu's lessons ran deep. Never mock anyone's pain, he told them, because sometimes, laughter hides tears. His words wrapped the little ones in kindness, teaching them compassion more powerful than any textbook. Yet not everyone appreciated his efforts. The village landlord sneered, "Paagal Paddu, wasting time again. Who will pay you?" Paddu simply smiled. "Kindness pays, sob, it always does." One stormy night, lightning tore through the sky. The wind destroyed his fragile hut, scattering books and slates into the mud. Paddu sat heartbroken, clutching a soaked notebook like treasure. But before dawn, something extraordinary happened. The children returned, carrying sticks, cloth, and courage. Together, they rebuilt the hut. Arav, the little boy, stood proud and said, "You taught us kindness. Now it's our turn." Paddu looked around, tears glistening, and whispered, "Maybe I wasn't teaching them, maybe they were teaching me." When the sun rose that morning, villagers saw something they never expected: laughter and learning blooming from brokenness. That day, Paagal Kaddu Paddu became Guruji Paddu, the teacher who made madness a miracle. Years passed, and the little mud school grew into a symbol of hope. Children who once begged on the streets now proudly read poems under the same banyan tree. One afternoon, as Paddu was sweeping the classroom floor, a letter arrived, handwritten, folded neatly, smelling faintly of sandalwood. It read, "Greater than, to the one who never stopped teaching. Please come. You're needed tomorrow." Paddu's hands trembled. The letter bore the seal of the old village school, the same one where he'd once taught before tragedy struck. His heart pounded. Memories of laughter, chalk dust, and his son Ravi's voice flooded back. For a moment, he thought of not going. But something in his soul whispered, "Go, old man, go one last time." The next morning, dressed in his faded kurta and carrying his favorite pumpkin, Paddu walked to the school. The walls were freshly painted, covered in bright drawings of smiling pumpkins and children holding hands. At the gate stood Arav, now a grown man wearing a teacher's badge. "Guruji," he said, his voice trembling, "I reopened this school, because you once opened my heart." Inside, hundreds of children clapped and cheered, "Guruji Paddu." Tears streamed down Paddu's face as he saw a framed board that read, "Dedicated to the man who taught us that madness can heal hearts." In the corner of the hall sat a little girl, shy and silent. Paddu knelt beside her, handed her a tiny pumpkin painted with a smile, and whispered, "He listens, Beta. Tell him your worries." The girl's face lit up with the same innocence he'd once seen in Ravi's eyes. The crowd watched in silence, realizing the greatest lesson wasn't about books, it was about love that never fades. Paddu's body had grown weak, but his spirit still glowed brighter than any candle in his classroom. He often coughed between lessons, his breath short, yet he never missed a day. "Guruji, please rest," Arav would beg, placing a blanket on his shoulders. But Paddu would only smile and say, "A teacher doesn't rest until every heart learns kindness." His eyes sparkled even as his hands trembled while writing on the slate. The children adored him, clinging to his every word, sensing time was slipping away faster than he would admit. Winter came with biting winds. The school planned a celebration to honor Paddu's lifetime of service, banners, songs, and garlands everywhere. Paddu entered, frail but radiant, carrying his last pumpkin, this one plain, unpainted. He held it close and said softly, "This one's for the next teacher. The one who will keep kindness alive." The crowd applauded, but before he could finish his speech, Paddu's voice faltered. His hands pressed against his chest. Gasps filled the room as Arav rushed forward, catching him. Paddu's lips quivered. "Promise me, Beta, teach with love, not for applause," he whispered, his voice barely a breath. Arav held him tightly, tears streaming as Paddu smiled one last time and looked toward his students. "Keep laughing," he whispered. "That's how I'll know I'm still here." His eyes gently closed. The hall went silent. In the candlelight, his final pumpkin sat glowing on the desk, reflecting the warmth he had poured into countless lives. Arav bowed his head beside it. That night, the world lost a mad teacher, but gained a timeless symbol of love that would never die, a lesson that would keep teaching long after its teacher was gone. Years passed, and the small school that began in a muddy hut became a shining foundation known everywhere as the Paddu Kindness Academy. Its walls were painted in bright colors, its gardens filled with laughter, and its motto written proudly at the gate, "Madness is love in disguise." Every year on Guruji Paddu's birthday, the students painted smiling pumpkins and carried them to hospitals, shelters, and lonely corners of the town, spreading the warmth he once shared so freely. Each pumpkin carried a message: be kind. Always. Arav, now the head teacher, watched the children and often smiled through tears. When a news reporter once asked, "Why pumpkins?" he replied softly, "Because they remind us that even simple things can carry great hearts." His voice cracked slightly, but his eyes shone with pride. One afternoon, as he locked the classroom, a little girl approached him holding a small orange pumpkin. "Sir," she said shyly, "Guruji told me to give this to you." Arav paused, the handwriting on the pumpkin read, "Teach with love." It was identical to Paddu's writing. He looked up at the clear sky, his heart trembling. "You're still teaching, aren't you, Guruji?" he whispered. The wind stirred the trees gently, almost like a reply. Voiceover fades in. Sometimes, the world laughs at those who love too deeply, the ones who seem Paagal. But those are the hearts that keep humanity alive. The camera pans to rows of glowing pumpkins, smiling in the sunlight. Children laugh, old memories linger, and kindness lives on. Paddu may have left the world, but his laughter still echoes through every heart that dares to be kind, proof that even the smallest act of love can change everything.